Halloween is a holiday which has been around for more than 1,000 years, a celebration observed on the 31st of October. Originally a religious observance, it became increasingly secular over time until its religious trappings all but disappeared. Today, Halloween is considered a holiday purely for dress up and fun, especially for children. Crime, however, doesn't stop just because it's Halloween. And while some enjoy the holiday and its association with all things horror, for others the horror and violence is all too real. Today on Crime Tape, to mark the most grotesque and violent time of year, we will be looking at the 13 most horrendous Halloween crimes. On Halloween night in 2011, Liddell Peoples, aged 55, became enraged after losing a bag of trick-or-treating sweets and throwing what could only be described as a tantrum. Unable to track down his bag of Hershey's, Jolly Ranchers and Tootsie Rolls, he accused his partner, 49-year-old Maria Adams, of stealing them from him. Responding to Liddell's outburst, Maria threw a plate at his head. Liddell then became further enraged and picked up a knife and repeatedly stabbed her. Maria died at Stoge Hospital, while Liddell was arrested shortly after the stabbing, charged with attempted murder and aggravated domestic battery. Liddell was later found guilty and sentenced to 30 years in prison. It is unclear whether Liddell ever found his missing sweets. During Halloween 1998, 21-year-old Carl Jackson had spent a long day at work, followed by an evening of trick-or-treating with his girlfriend and her young son. He was in no mood for joining in with the usual Halloween pranks. When his car was targeted with eggs, Carl became infuriated and got out of the vehicle to tell off the youngster who had thrown the eggs. Unfortunately for Carl, it was in the South Bronx, which is known as a tough neighbourhood. 17-year-old Curtis Sterling shot Carl in the head, killing him instantly. Sterling was arrested, charged and imprisoned for murder. Every Halloween, Carl Jackson's mother sends her son's killer a card telling him how she's glad that he's still rotting away in prison. On the morning of October 31st, 1981, in Amarillo, Texas, Johnny Frank Garrett, a 17-year-old boy who lived across the street from the St. Francis Convent, raped and strangled 76-year-old nun sister Tadia Benz. Garrett was tried and convicted of the crime. It was determined after examination that he had multiple personalities as a result of child abuse from his mother, grandmother and grandfather. He was executed at the age of 28 at Huntsville Unit on February 11, 1992 via lethal injection. Garrett's final meal was ice cream. His final words were, "I'd like to thank my family for loving me and taking care of me, and the rest of the world can kiss my ass." Returning home from church on Sunday, October 31st, 2010, Devon Griffin walked into a scene of unthinkable horror. Devon found his brother Derek, mother Susan, and Susan's husband William Liske, all dead, having been savagely murdered. William Liske Jr. was the main suspect. He suffered with schizophrenia and had a documented history of violence and wildly unpredictable behaviour. The 24-year-old was quickly found at a local halfway house and arrested by police. Liske Jr. confessed to all 3 murders, using a gun and a hammer in the killings. Before his sentencing in 2011, Liske apologised for killing his father, stepmother and stepbrother, blaming mental illness and Satan for his actions. In 2015, Liske, then aged 29, was found dead in his cell at Ross Correctional Institution, having taken his own life. On Halloween night 1979, 16-year-old Shirley Lynette Ledford was snatched from a gas station where she was hitching home after a Halloween party. The 2 men, Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris, unknown to Shirley at the time, were the LA serial Toolbox Killers. The pair had a vile and perverted interest for tool-based torture, often taping their crimes. Bittaker and Norris beat, raped and tortured Shirley before strangling her and leaving her body on a front lawn. A month later, both men were caught. They remained unrepentant and spent the rest of their lives in prison. Everyone has heard the old wives' tale of the poisoned sweets at Halloween, of children being given candy by a crazy neighbour that will kill the child that eats it. In Texas, 1974, Ronald Clark O'Brien was that crazy person. He poisoned 5 pixie sticks with potassium cyanide and planned on killing 5 children. One of them was his son. Ronald had taken out insurance policy on his young son and planned to blame his death on a neighbour so that he could go on to collect the insurance money. 11-year-old Timothy ate the cyanide-filled candy, and within an hour he was hospitalised and pronounced dead. Detectives figured out what had happened due to the smell on Timothy's breath. They were able to save the other children and confiscate the poisoned candy before it could be consumed. On the 31st of March 1984, Ronald Clark O'Brien was put to death by the state in Huntsville, Texas. As a lethal injection was administered, locals shouted "trick or treat" and threw candy at a group of anti-death protesters. The Smiley Face murder theory by New York City detectives Kevin Gannon and Auntie Drouard and Dr. Lee Gilbertson, a criminal justice professor, theories that 45 young men who were found dead in bodies of water across several Midwestern American states from the 1990s to the 2010s were not in fact accidental drownings, but instead were the victims of one or more serial killers. The term Smiley Face became connected to the alleged murders when it was made public that the police had discovered graffiti of a smiley face near locations where the bodies were found. University of Minnesota student Chris Jenkins' death has similarities with the other young men found in the water. Chris disappeared on Halloween 2002, turning up 4 months later in the Mississippi River still wearing his Halloween costume. Local police believed his death to have been as a result of accident or suicide, though this has never been proven. On the evening of Halloween 1957, Peter Fabiano, a Los Angeles hairdresser, opened his door to trick-or-treaters. However, before he could reach for the sweets to place into a brown paper bag that one of the trick-or-treaters was holding, bullets were fired from the bag and into Peter's chest. Goldin and Joan were lovers, but Joan was also seeing Peter's wife Betty, and through her jealousy and desperation to get Peter out of the picture, plotted to kill him with Goldin's help. The pair thought that Halloween would be the perfect night to skulk the neighbourhood in disguise. Goldin wore a domino mask, the kind Robin wears to fight crime alongside Batman. The 2 women were charged with first-degree murder, which was eventually reduced to second-degree murder after they made a plea deal. The judge sentenced them to 5 years to life in prison. Halloween night 1973 in the city of Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. 9-year-old Lisa French was dressed up as Little Hobo, trick-or-treating alone around her neighbourhood. Lisa was originally to be accompanied by a friend, Ann Parker, but her friend had been grounded, leaving Lisa to go out alone. Ringing Turner's doorbell, Lisa said trick-or-treat, and Turner then proceeded to lure Lisa inside his home, where he attacked and killed her, then dumped her body in a nearby field. Turner was arrested on August 9, 1974, and sentenced to 38 years and 6 months in prison. The Halloween killer has been eligible for release from 2018, but the state continues to refuse his parole on the grounds that he is a sexually violent person who should not be released back into society. When 12-year-old trick-or-treater TJ Darisaw knocked on Quentin Patrick's door in the city of Sumter, South Carolina on Halloween night in 2008, he expected candy. What he in fact got was 29 bullets through the front door from a fully automatic AK-47. 11 of the bullets hit TJ, killing him instantly. His dad and younger brother were also hit, but survived. What TJ and his family didn't know was that Patrick was a convicted drug dealer who had upset a rival gang of dealers, and so he was fully expecting a retribution from them. TJ just sadly knocked on the wrong door that night, and Patrick got a 30-year prison sentence. David Berkowitz, responsible for the 1977 Summer of Sam reign of terror, is no stranger to murder. In 1981, while Berkowitz was in prison, he predicted the Halloween deaths of Ronald Sisman and Elizabeth Platzman. He knew they were going to be shot execution style. Although he didn't plan or actually kill the couple himself, he had long claimed that he was only partly responsible for the killings attributed to him. He claimed that it was part of a cult, and that Sisman had a video of one of the Son of Sam shootings that was going to make its way to the authorities. So he claimed the cult killed him to protect themselves. The truth of all this is still being questioned and may never be proven. Killers in masks is mostly something that you see in the movies, so it makes sense that when killers do use masks, that they are often ones that you are likely to see on the big screen. In the killing of 19-year-old Brooklyn man Anthony Seaberry in 2013, the killer was wearing a ghost face mask as seen in the popular Scream horror movies. Anthony was shot in the torso outside a building on East 31st Street. The case remains unsolved, although it's thought that the shooting could be tied in with other shootings across New York City that night, for which a man was later shot and killed by police officers. Adrienne Insogna, Leslie Mazzara and Lauren Mianza spent most of Halloween night in 2004 handing out treats to trick-or-treaters at their home in Napa, California. At approximately 11 PM the three women retired to bed, but there would be one more knock at the door that night. Copple entered the house and brutally attacked Leslie and Adrienne. Lauren ran out of the house and drove away after hearing the blood-curdling screams of her friends. Copple turned himself in to police in September 2005. He admitted to lying in wait and committing multiple murders using a knife. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive terms of life in prison without parole. When he addressed the court before sentencing, he claimed that he had been suffering from depression and suicidal thoughts since his teenage years. A motive for the killings was never disclosed.